Elon Musk built and funded OpenAI as a strict nonprofit with one goal: save humanity from the risks of rogue artificial intelligence. Today, that project looks very different. Under Sam Altman, the organization morphed into an $86 billion capped profit entity. Instead of freely collaborating to democratize artificial intelligence, they've effectively locked their most powerful models behind an exclusive paywall, prioritizing Microsoft's Azure customers over their founding charter. Read the dominant internet commentary, and you'll hear Musk is a hypocrite with sour grapes. The narrative claims he rage quit after a failed Tesla merger, and now he's jealous of GPT-4's success while building his own competitor, xAI. But focusing on character flaws serves as a distraction. It ignores the fact that this lawsuit exposes a significant shift in how frontier technology is governed and who it eventually serves. The opposing perspective argues this was a historic bait-and-switch. OpenAI explicitly promised to freely collaborate and avoid concentrating power, only to abandon those principles for a restrictive, multi-billion-dollar Microsoft deal. Within these 35 pages, Musk's lawyers detail a sequence of corporate maneuvers that systematically dissolve the organization's ethics. The filing maps out the specific legal shifts required to exit a nonprofit charter, showing how any organization can engineer its way out of a noble mission and into high-level profitability. Building frontier AI requires sprawling data campuses, transforming the industry from simple software development into a global energy and hardware operation. The aggressive trajectory of AI compute costs completely dwarfs the flatline of traditional nonprofit funding models. Pure altruism cannot sustain this. But beyond finances, these massive data centers generate severe infrasound, low-frequency noise causing documented health issues for nearby residents. Managing the liability of these physical impacts and the debt required to build them necessitates the legal protections of a for-profit corporation. When a project reaches this industrial scale, a nonprofit ethical charter physically cannot survive the resulting financial and legal pressures. To handle rising costs, the nonprofit transitioned into a capped profit shell, placing a strict numerical ceiling on investor returns. But when a $13 billion investment from Microsoft arrives, it shatters that ceiling, turning the organization into a functional subsidiary of its investor. The lawsuit claims the organization followed a pattern, first by swearing to investors that the mission was sacred, and then by systematically hiring a tier of executives who had no history with the original charter. The final stages involve restructuring the company's legal obligations to protect the new profit motive. Then, when the public notices the shift, the organization maintains a posture of shock and disappointment that its motives were ever questioned. The complaint points to internal messages showing that leadership knew they were moving away from their founding principles. They actively discussed prioritizing Microsoft's funding over the original nonprofit goals because the capital requirements were too great to ignore. Once the scale of the investment becomes this large, ethical guardrails are often treated as obstacles. When a billion-dollar check is on the table, the original values are dismantled to make room for it. OpenAI is following an established industry pattern. They just executed the transition much faster and far more openly than the tech giants who came before them. We can see this backpedaling on our timeline of corporate mottos. Google launched with the code "Don't be evil," only to quietly strike it from their official guidelines once it conflicted with their business model. Facebook's push to move fast and break things vanished once they were held responsible for breaking democratic norms. And Twitter's stated commitment to absolute free speech lasted exactly as long as it took for new ownership to take control. Every tech company's ethical mission statement appears to have an expiration date. That date is triggered the moment a project's potential for profit outweighs its founder's initial idealism. From a legal standpoint, OpenAI will likely win this case. They meticulously documented their restructuring and covered their tracks, which usually satisfies the court's requirements for corporate governance. Disillusioned developers are already abandoning the project for open alternatives, as the organization's open branding loses its original meaning and value. Preventing this shift requires more than just a mission statement. It requires writing those values into the legal corporate structure, giving mission-focused board members absolute veto power over every funding decision. If an organization's highest values can be overridden by a simple board vote or a large investment,
They weren't actually values. They were just marketing copy.